Welcome to our Three Panes of CoSHH Management webinar. I'm joined today by Aisling of our Customer Success team, and she's going to talk us through the three most common issues faced in CoSHH management.
Thanks, Laura. So this webinar is going to address the three main pains of CoSHH that we mostly encounter when we're talking to health and safety professionals. We're going to tease out the pains a little bit and show how the effective software chemical and CoSHH modules can ease those pains. So we probably won't get through everything in this, but it's a good insight into how the modules actually help solve these pains. So Effective as a software company purely provide the software tools that you need to be able to manage the processes yourselves. We don't do the assessments or run a chemical register or maintain your SDS sheets, but during the onboarding process, we do help you with optimizing your processes to best utilize the system and to guide you through best practice from our experience and from our knowledge of the industry. So the three biggest pains as we see them are the manual nature with which a lot of chemical and cost management is done. So essentially paperwork. Sharing info is a big pain as well in terms of whether it's components of assessment or the full assessments themselves. So things like the components, the information on the substances, their hazards, their controls. Another thing is activity tracking. So managing all the activity around the chemicals and the CoSHH. So who does what and when and how to be proactive about it. So with the manual processes, there's the summary of the main pains with these manual processes. There's no visibility or oversight. There's a long lag time, difficult to manage approval rejection, a lot of duplication of effort, and it's difficult to be proactive. So with working with paper or Word documents, it means there's no oversight or visibility on what work has or hasn't been done until it's submitted and collated together. So even things like if you're doing paper forms, does it get scanned? Who scans it? Who replaces the old file with the new file? How do people know that there's a new file created? And there can be you're thinking about lag time, there can be a long time between filling out a form, sending it in to be reviewed, it being sent back for updates, etc., etc. And eventually things just fall through the gaps. And that's a big problem with the lack of visibility or oversight and the long lag time. So then a question is, do you have a formal approval or rejection process in place, or is it just a paper policy box ticking exercise to meet your legislative requirements? Or is it something that's an integral part of what you do in your processes? So when dealing with paper and Word docs, how do you know what's already been done and if you can actually use something of what's already been done as a previous assessment? So in terms of thinking this duplication of effort, how can you reuse what's already been there while still actually meeting your compliance requirements? Also, how do you standardize what's part of an assessment? If the only difference for a CoSHH assessment is the location in which the task is to be carried out, then do you need to entirely rewrite an assessment, or can you use what's already been done and change some of the basic information? So generally working with paper and non-specialist tools, it's really difficult to be proactive about it. You're normally working in a reactive way. Usually you're hearing wow, this document is really out of date. I should probably get that updated. But then it's also impossible to do proper resource planning while you're working reactively. So the solutions to these manual process pains are all based around going digital to a dedicated tool. So get a software tool to facilitate this work, get a tool that allows you to work off templates, get a tool that has an approval process built in, and get a tool that allows you to clone copy existing assessments or use templates. So Effective software is one such tool. My personal opinion, it's the best, but they pay me to say that. But it does cover off all the bases. So when you see the various modules you have, depending on what modules of the system you were to buy, the basis of using the chemicals and CoSHH is starting out with the chemicals module. So it's a fundamental part of doing CoSHH is to manage your chemical information. So if we go into the chemical module, it allows you to see at a glance here on this first page the basic information about your chemicals, their ID numbers, storage, locations, categories, their state, if you want to track CAS. Suppliers also a key piece. if you're looking at usage, and it gives you this quick glance as well at the SDS status and risk assessment status. So do you have SDS sheets or risk assessments associated with the chemical? And then the basic infograms, pictograms on the actual hazards based on the hazard phrases. So it's also possible through the chemical module to actually track usage, stock, deliveries, and that can be key for some organizations that have, say, a lot of it would be universities that have laboratories that they would actually need to run a management system like this because of the scale they're working at. So if we go into a chemical record itself, you can see how much detail is actually captured. So you've got whatever information you want to fill in terms of the usage and the locations. You're talking about the state. The formula is something you can put in if it's a compound or if it's a pure chemical in itself. So when in this, you can actually see there's an SDS attached to it. There's risk assessment attached to it. There's actually a place for notes. It's tagged with a supplier and it's got the supplier's details in it. With this, you can actually see there's actions arising. So you can actually run actions directly related to a chemical. So if, say, for example, you want to do weekly checks on the oil levels of alkalis, if you're storing them, something like that, like this can be done on a chemical by chemical basis. So if we go into just edit this chemical record, you can see what's editable. So with your hazard statements and that, your physical, your health and environmental, you're putting in your phrases there. You're tagging the phrases that are relevant to that particular chemical. A lot of that you'll be getting from the SDS sheet, but you can also add multiple sheets or risk assessments. It's possible as well there to stick in a web link so people know where to go to get a new SDS sheet, but that doesn't get pulled into the system. It's just a reference link there. So when having all this in a central location means that as you're doing a CoSHH assessment, and multiple CoSHH assessments could have the same chemicals involved in the tasks, all of them are pulling in identical information. You're taking out the manual part of looking for this. Every time you do an assessment, you're looking for its SDS, you're looking for its risk assessment. Because you're tagging a chemical and the chemical has these things associated with it, everything gets pulled together. And that takes a huge amount of manual labor out of looking and searching and finding up-to-date things. And it just gives you that centralized point. If we go back out then to the modules, and we just go into CoSHH, what you're seeing here is kind of the main landing page where you can see what's draft, what's for approval, what's live, or in the archive, you can see what's actually archived or just superseded. The assessments from all the assessors are in the one place, so you always know who's working on what and you can avoid duplicated work. People who have access to the module can see who has something assigned to them in drafts, something that's in for approval. So this is where you can avoid duplication of effort as well in another way. Also here on this page, you can just do a single one click on the PDF icon just to grab that form. So yet again, reducing the amount of effort it takes to either complete it or to grab the information you need. So if we go into an actual assessment, that's a task-based assessment, from here you can actually make new revisions. You can clone on the same site, you can copy to other sites. These options work as well as you have the option to actually use template assessments or make template assessments. And this yet again reduces the workload as an assessment doesn't have to be written each time. So taking again a lot of the labor out of the process and yet again a lot of the effort. The questionnaires that are part of the assessment, so the questionnaires that are there to assess the risk specific to that task, they're designed by the organization using our audits module. So this is based on your own processes and procedures, and you can create these templates. And they'll often cover like more task specific stuff, such as who can be exposed and how, the chances of exposure, your health surveillance and your control measures. And this is built according to what you need, the danger associated with the task, but we guide you through the onboarding process and best practice in terms of how to create these questionnaires, what would suit you best as an organization. So kind of the second main pain as we move on from the manual stuff is difficulties with actually sharing information. So pains with sharing info within an organization are usually based around kind of poor or absent policies and procedures, or just simply that there's no suitable tools, that the will is there, but the tools just aren't. And quite often there's no universally acknowledged kind of single source of truth. And that's what you're kind of working towards, ideally, when you're going to a digital system for this. So when people are carrying out CoSHH assessments within an organization, it can be very difficult for the organization to control what resources people are using to carry out these assessments. And so like this means, you know, the SDS sheets, the chemical risk assessments, that's if you have ones that are different to your CoSHH assessments, which are usually task-based. So your basic chemical info, your supplier, safety statements, PPE, all these kind of things that are actually requirements in CoSHH assessments. And people need the most up-to-date info within an organization, and they need to be able to access it anywhere and anytime. And it really needs to be time efficient. Like, so when you're looking at the kind of the questions here, so how do you share these SDS sheets? How do you share the chemical risk assessments, the basic chemical info? So we cover that kind of with the chemical module. How do you make sure everyone has the most up-to-date version? How do you make sure people can access it when and where they need it? And how to make sure all the kind of paper printed versions that you'll ultimately need are approved for distribution. So because people still need the paper versions of cost assessments, but you want to make sure that they have the most up-to-date. So where do they go? What if somebody else is already working on a new revision? Can somebody see that and see who's working on it? Yet again, part of the benefits of going digital and going with the effective system, you're pulling in things from the chemical module, everything's versioned, everything's access-based, and the PDF is generated. So if we look at the first page, say, of one of these PDFs of these CoSHH assessments, so in the system, you're working towards a single source of truth by having all the chemical information in one place, all the CoSHH assessments referring to these chemicals, as I said before, kind of pull the same information in. The attachments for each chemical then are also pulled into the CoSHH assessment. So your things like your SDS and your risk assessment, these are all pulled in together. So, and by having a revisioning system within a cloud-based software, you can make sure that everyone has access to the most up-to-date version anywhere, anytime. Access to the information is controlled individually, and this is done by a super user within your own organization. And this access can be split between people who just need to see the assessments and people who need to edit them. So like if we look at, say, the specifics of the first chemical in this, you can see it's got the basic information, your safety phrases, your supplier info, all these things that are core to this, that are needed for this chemical within this. And as you're adding it, creating a task, you can add multiple chemicals, and this summary pulls in for everyone, as well as all their attachments. The documents, if we go up to the top of the PDF, the documents have a version number. So you can see this is CoSHH 2.4. This is the fourth revision of this particular assessment. It has extra detail as well on the status, the submission date, the approval date. And it means that you can say company-wide essentially what is live, what is the current version that you're using. So that forms a lot of the basis of the sharing, is that you're going cloud-based, you can control who sees what, who accesses what. The PDF has a huge amount of information and pulls it all together once you've done your put your information together correctly in the chemical module, and it's just starting to take away the manual effort and making it easier to share. So then you're moving into issues about like who's notified about what, who's responsible for what, and how do you monitor for compliance and duty of care, like your specific requirements. So it's a simple issue that frequently comes up, is how to know when something's due for review, like who's supposed to do the review, who are the assessors, the approvers, if there's actions that need to be carried out, who's going to do them, and how do you track all this? How do you monitor it as well to be able to show your compliance and duty of care? So being able to move towards a proactive way of managing your chemicals and CoSHH, so going away from a reactive way of management, it means you're freeing up time. And so you're looking at removing the issues with the manual processes, making ease of sharing. It's all reducing and freeing up time. It's helping you get more efficient and giving you more space to be proactive in your work. So a key feature is that all the modules in the system kind of have customizable notifications that can be set to best suit an organization's needs. So these include like who receives what notifications. This one in particular is for CoSHH. Like you can set your review period to 12 or 24 months, so you get a notification and when these assessments are coming due for review or for renewal. So a core part of the CoSHH assessments kind of are the questionnaires checklists, which, as I kind of mentioned earlier, can be run off templates. So when creating a new CoSHH assessment, the assignee for this assessment actually is assigned the relevant questionnaire, and they can create actions within that questionnaire as well in draft, live, or completed forms. The chemicals and PPE that are in the task that are involved in that task are tagged as you're creating the assessment, and these get pulled from the chemicals module, from the PPE module. And then the next step is the questionnaire, these checklists, and these are assigned to the person who's supposed to carry out this assessment. So within these chemicals and within these assessments, and particularly within the questionnaire, the actions can be created and prioritized, and they can be recurring. And so these are ideal particularly in the CoSHH module for logging kind of recurring control measures, these things that need to be done frequently, or just even for logging things that have already been completed, as you can change their status. So it's important if there's some key part of, say, the control measures or something that you need to be recurring checks. This can be put through the CoSHH module. It can be put through the actual questionnaire and the checklist for it. So how you see what's being done or who's doing what, you've got the audits, or you've got the notifications that come through. So here we're saying assigned audits. These are the questionnaires that are the core part of the assessments. You've got ones that are due, you've got ones that are submitted. Then you also get another one when the assessments are due for review. So these all come directly to your email and contain a link directly to the item you have to do the task. So these can come to the people who have to actually do the tasks, or the supervisors and the management who need to oversee what's being done and who's doing it. So the links in particular are useful for people who are being assigned actions out of these things, assigned assessments, that they're not going to be constantly monitoring the system to find these tasks. Another part of this is the oversight. So the oversight is helped using the reporting module. So obviously, as you went into the chemical module, you could see your traffic light system essentially for if your SDS is present, is your risk assessment present. But also when you entered the CoSHH system, you could see what was live, what's archived, superseded. But in more detail, you can go into the reports module. So there's a particular chemical monitoring section where you can track your chemicals by hazard, your SDS compliance, your CoSHH assessment status overview, and your CoSHH assessments and actions report to see what actions have been raised against what assessments. So these reports can be viewed on screen, in summary form, in a PDF, and as a CSV download. And these can be scheduled to be emailed out at regular intervals. So often an example is like senior management or compliance officers that want to get, say, monthly checks on where we stand as an organization with these. So particularly things like the PDF, like you can get that at a glance look across all your sites or site by site, what the organization's compliance statement status is with the CoSHH assessments. So you can see here what's in date, what's due for review, and how many actually are past their review date. So kind of just kind of back to the three pains, your manual processes, your difficulties with sharing, your activities tracking. So the three solutions, or the solutions that go with these pains are, for your manual processes, go digital. Get yourself an approval process in place. Use templates, clones, and copies as much as possible. So your difficulties with sharing, you need something cloud-based, you need versioning, and you need this single source of truth. And then for your activities tracking, it's configurable notifications, your separate access levels, and detailed reports. And these are all things that the effective software system is designed to do. It's a digital cloud-based system. Got your approval process built in. Everything is working towards using templates, clones, and copies so that you can reduce how much effort you're putting into stuff. And you want to have that versioning system so you're getting your single source of truth, but you want that oversight as well based on access levels and your reporting to see what's going on and where. And that's kind of just a quick look through kind of these three main pains of CoSHH that we encounter, and some solutions for them, and how the effective system provides those solutions.
Thank you very much for that, Aisling. We actually have a few questions that some of our customers commonly ask about the CoSHH module. First one is, do you create CoSHH assessments for us?
So no, we don't create any assessments. So the assessments are based on what you currently have in place already, or if you're designing from scratch, that's fine. What we provide is the tool with which to do these. But during the onboarding process, you will have a dedicated customer success manager who will actually move you through the process of best practice, what to do, what to set up, what you need to have in place to actually best utilize this. But we don't create the CoSHH assessments. We facilitate you and we help you and guide you through creating your own.
Next question, do you update our SDS sheets?
No, it's the kind of same thing as the assessments, that this is the tool you use to manage it yourself. So you can attach your SDS there and it gets pulled into your CoSHH assessments as required. You can stick in a web link so people have somewhere to go to get a new one, but that web link doesn't pull the SDS into the site. That's purely a reference link for your staff when reviewing the chemicals to actually be able to go and check, is the SDS updated or that? But no, we do not manage the safety data sheets.
And finally, can you track usage?
Yes, the chemical module does have a usage system in it. So you can track usage, you can track deliveries, and even one of the notifications specifically in the chemical module actually has, it's a notification for order reminders. So you'll have a threshold at which, as you're tracking your deliveries and your usage, once you get to below a certain amount in your stock control, that will actually trigger reminders to reorder these chemicals. So it can be quite useful then as well for tracking your chemical usage, in addition to tracking your assessments and your risk assessments.
Okay, that's all the questions we have time for right now. I want to say thanks to Aisling for putting together a very detailed and comprehensive overlook of the CoSHH module. Thanks very much everyone for joining us today, and if you have any further questions relating to CoSHH, you can contact our customer success team and they'd be happy to help you out with anything. So thanks again for joining us today.
Perfect. Thanks guys.